Good morning, everyone. My name is Josephine Kilo.
Hello, everyone.
My name is Marco, and this is my Pollen Talk. Humanity is facing a big challenge. In order to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, we have to reduce our emissions quickly. We have to reach net zero in between 2040 and 2055, and basically have to decarbonize every sector and every process of our daily lives. With the upcoming of the Fridays for Future movement, there was a lot of pressure on the German government to strengthen their climate ambitions. So in 2019, they came up with the Climate Protection Program 2030. And part of that program was the introduction of a German price on CO2 emissions. This CO2 price covered two sectors, the transport sector and the heating sector. And both of those are not part of the European Union's emission trading system. Now, when talking about a CO2 price, the question is how high this price should be. So at first, the government came up with the red dashed line, but especially for federal states where the Green Party has a high share of votes, this was not enough. So in December 2019, they renewed it and came up with the red line representing the price level, starting at 25 euros per ton of CO2 in 2021, increasing to 55 euros by 2025. And after that, it should get set on a yearly basis, resulting in a wide range of possible prices. But in order to reach the Paris Agreement, we would need to be where the gray line ends in 2030 at close to 120 euros per ton of CO2. Now, science said that we should have started with a much higher price in the beginning, represented by the blue line, which would make the increase of the price levels a bit more mellow. But what did this mean in practice? With the beginning of this year, fuel prices in Germany rose for about 7 cents per liter. In 2018, the French government introduced an eco-tax, which resulted in a rise of fuel prices of approximately 5 cents. And as a result, people took it to the streets all over France. Their protests were not directed to the climate politics of the French government, but more because there was a missing social reform accompanying the tax, leading to the perception that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer because they're more affected by the tax. So the question is how a carbon price can be designed so that it is fair and just. A price independent of net income itself always is regressive, meaning that low-income households are affected more by it than high-income households. This is because they spend a higher share of their net income, for example, on heating, which is affected by the tax. The German government was well aware of that, so they did three things. They reduced electricity prices, they increased the commuter allowances, and they introduced subsidies, for example, on electric vehicles and new heating systems, which still are big investments and thus not really feasible for low-income households. But there is another way how a carbon tax can be designed in a better way to make it more fair. If a substantial share of the revenue raised by that tax is reimbursed and paid back to the people, this tax can turn progressive, meaning that the high-income households actually pay more. If we look at the CO2 emissions, we see that low-income households have fewer CO2 emissions than high-income households. The medium CO2 emissions, represented by the green line, could be the amount of money paid by the medium citizen per year on CO2 emissions. And if all of those payments get reimbursed and paid back, he would be net zero. Now, looking at the low-income households, they emit less carbon, so they pay less, but if they still get paid back the same amount, this would result in a net surplus, so leading to a gain, getting more money out of the tax for the low-income household. Because of this, I have three recommendations, and I would like the German government to do three things to renew their carbon pricing system. Firstly, the price levels should be increased so that they align with the Paris Agreement in order for us to reach the targets we set ourselves. Secondly, a climate dividend should be introduced, which is paid per capita in order to make carbon pricing more socially balanced. And this climate dividend should be paid as a lump sum payment directly to the citizens so that it is visible and everybody has the feeling that they contribute to combat global warming and get rewarded for their ambitions. Thank you.